So we're having the work session on Bill number 20-0593, tax sales, properties exempt from sale for the purpose of directing the Director of Finance to withhold certain properties from tax sale, defining certain terms, requiring that the Director of Finance adopt regulations to implement the requirements of this section, requiring that the Director of Finance submit an annual report to the Mayor and City Council, and generally implementing the authority provided by Section 14-811F of the State Tax Property Article. This bill was introduced on August 17, 2020. The sponsor of the bill is Councilmember Danielle McCray. We had a hearing, and now we're moved on to one of the two work sessions, I believe. Councilwoman McCray also serves as vice chair of this committee, and she is also the sponsor of this bill. And because we're working in a work session, I'm going to allow the vice chair to take over the work session, and then we're going to come back for what we're going to do after she's going to turn it over to me back to the work session. So does anyone have any questions on the committee at this point, or anyone from the mayor's office of how we're moving forward with this? So at this point, I want to turn it over to Vice Chair of Taxation, Finance, Economic Development Committee and sponsor of the bill, Councilwoman McCray.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you to the members of the committee. I'm just going to give a few comments on the bill. You've already stated that the bill does direct the Director of Finance to withhold properties of homeowners who are low income, homeowners who are at least 65 years old, or homeowners who are disabled from tax sale. I want to make sure that we use every tool that we have just to protect our most vulnerable residents that I just previously mentioned. And I said this before at a previous hearing, but oftentimes we do talk about what we can't do at the city level. And this is something that we can do, and I feel that we should lead on. So at this time, I'm going to go ahead and just move on to our agencies. We've already heard the agency's reports. I just want to see if each agency has any additional amendments right now or any additional comments. And I'm going to start with the law department.
Good morning, Councilwoman McCray. This is Elena DePietro from the Law Department. Nothing has changed since my report. The enabling legislation gives the City Council rather broad authority to develop some eligibility criteria by regulation or in the code. And so, but the only thing that would be you'd have to abide by is the definitions of dwelling and homeowners as they appear in the state tax property article, section 9105. So that's something to keep in mind as you move forward. And let's see, and yeah, so that's the only caveat I would have to my report.
Okay, thank you, Elena. We're going to move on to housing and community development. That's going to be Ms. Stephanie Murdoch.
Hi, yes, good morning. Thank you. At the last hearing, we got into pretty extensively the work of our Division of Homeownership and Housing Preservation. Michael O'Leary was on the call with us. He's our tax sale coordination services leader, and he assists homeowners in avoiding tax sale, understanding the tax sale process, and also does activities like promote tax sale clinics, conduct community-based information sessions, and connects homeowners with additional resources like state and city tax credits. So that being said, we are going to stand by our report, no objection, and we do not have any additional comments.
Okay. Thank you. I just want to step back. Did any of our committee members have any questions right now for the law department or for the housing department? Okay. We're going to move on to the finance department.
Good morning. This is Henry Raymond. We would like to offer amendments, and I would like to offer some discussion regarding this. As we've previously discussed, presently the Finance Department is opposed to the bill. We believe it's too broad. We believe that this bill will result in revenue loss to the city, and another unintended consequence is that we will experience additional costs to implement the program. Now, with that said, we believe that protecting fragile senior citizens from tax sale is the right thing to do. I believe that we need to review the criteria in order to make it more restrictive. And we did some research on the city of Philadelphia. We need more time to review that information. What I would like to propose is an additional workshop in the month of December so that we have time to fully explore the criteria, how to capture the criteria, how to implement the program, develop a timeline for the implementation of the program, and have a better understanding using Philadelphia as a model of how the city of Baltimore can implement this potential legislation. In terms of the time frame right now, I think it should be calendar 2022 because of the time that's going to be needed to implement the program. So what I'm requesting today is additional time for the staff to do staff work, have another work session in December to come back and report the findings and the proposed schedule for implementation based on what we believe the appropriate criteria might be in order to minimize the loss of revenue to the city and at the same time building an operational model that's sustainable and can be implemented, because this is going to result in additional costs to the city for implementation. And I'll stop at that point.
Okay, Mr. Raymond, thanks for your comments and thanks for sharing that. The first thing I want to say, and Councilman Costello, I do want to acknowledge that I do see you. I just want to make this comment first. So the first thing is that residents within the city of Baltimore, especially right now during COVID, prior to COVID as well, they're looking for all of us within city government to move at a certain level with a sense of urgency. So I just want to make that comment when I hear your feedback about how long you need for the implementation or how long you need to do the research. Councilman Costello, at this time, I did see your hand for questions.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a few overarching comments, and then I'm hoping we can delve a little bit more in. Madam Chair, am I coming in clear, or do you need me to plug in my headset? You're on mute.
Apologies, I can hear you fine.
Okay, thank you. One, I want to applaud the sponsor for her intent here. And I want to be clear, explicitly clear, I am very supportive of this concept. I think obviously what we're here to do today is to kind of work through some of the discussions that we've had about really at the end of the day, what is the scope of people that will be included as well as those that will be excluded from this. And it seems to me it's pretty clear that the chairwoman can interrupt me if I articulate this incorrectly, but the intent here is to provide a protection for legacy homeowners in low-income communities. I think that's probably the simplest way to characterize it, at least as I understand it. And I will say that I've had kind of two overarching concerns with the bill, which I've communicated with the sponsor. One being what the fiscal impact is, and two, kind of allowing the program to operate in perpetuity, or essentially allow those who apply and participate in perpetuity. I don't want to touch the second one today. What I really want to focus on is the fiscal impact and just getting a better understanding. Director Mara from your team, along with Mayor's Office of Government Relations, briefed me on kind of that first piece, the fiscal impact, yesterday. And I was having some challenges understanding what the fiscal impact is, but I also recognize that your office is, and this is no fault to finance or BBMR, is a bit limited in its ability to determine the fiscal impact of various scenarios for this, because there are some external factors, specifically information that you would need to make that fiscal or to analyze the fiscal impact that are outside of your control. Specifically, those are the income of folks, which is a factor that's considered in this legislation. Also, whether or not they have a disability. And then to a lesser extent, while this information I believe is not directly available, it can be pulled a little more easily than the previous two, is the length of time that the homeowner has utilized that property as their primary residence. So I'm hoping that in the interest of the public, we can have a more in-depth conversation about those specific things, what the challenges are, and how quickly we can expect some more specificity around the analysis that I think goes into the statement that the director rightfully made about concerns about the fiscal impact. So I want to talk about where we start and how we analyze that and how we get to that statement, because I think the bottom line is everyone agrees this will have some fiscal impact on the city. I want to get more clarity on what that fiscal impact is and the methodology behind how we get there. Does that make sense, Director?
It does. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear, sir.
Oh, okay. Thank you. I think you articulated it well. In terms of the age requirement, income eligibility, whether an individual has a disability or not, and the number of years they've resided in their property, those data elements presently are very challenging for us to try to accumulate. That's the reason why I'm asking for a work session in December to give us time to try to massage the data, gather the data, analyze that data, report back in December what we think would be reasonable. Right now, it's premature. The reason we need this time is essentially, do you want to do it quick or do you want to do it right? I opt that we do it the right way. And in order to do it correctly, with the absence of being able to aggregate that data right now, we need more time. And that's what we're asking for. I think you're muted.
Director, I certainly appreciate that request. And of course, I'm going to, would always defer to our permanent chairman of the committee, Vice President Middleton. I just want to bring up a couple things, though, in response to that. One, if I'm not mistaken, the last council meeting of this term is December 10th. Can someone from Government Relations or the Council President's Office confirm that for me? Mayor's Office of Government Relations.
Councilman, if you just give me 1 second, I'll pull it. You can continue and I'll just jump back in with the information.
Yeah, I'll wait actually because it's relevant to the first point I'm going to make.
The last scheduled meeting for the calendar year is December 12th. That's what's on the published calendar right now.
December 12th is the second day of Hanukkah, which is a Saturday. I'm not Jewish, but I'm also not coming in.
It's December. It's December the 10th.
December the 10th.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I misspoke. The 10th
Matt,
is correct.
that's okay. I'm just poking a little fun at you. So that means that, and when is the first day of the new term of the next council?
The new council will be sworn in on Tuesday, December 8th. This is Nina from the mayor's office.
Tuesday, December 8th. So that means and when is the new mayor sworn in?
The same day.
So that means that any legislation that is currently pending in this committee, in this term of the council, would need to be signed into law by the mayor by no later than Monday, technically Tuesday, December 8th before 11:59 a.m., correct?
Yes, I believe so.
And if it were not, then the bill would die for lack of passage and then would require to be reintroduced should the sponsor still want to continue, correct?
Again, I believe that is correct.
Okay, so if everyone's comfortable operating under that assumption, Director, I think the concern here, time frame, is that puts us right up against the wall in terms of, giving you the time that you believe you need to conduct that analysis the right way, which I think we all want you to conduct it the right way. We don't want you to rush through it. So, I would push back a little bit and challenge finance here and if it's okay, Madam Vice President, again, I would of course defer to you because this is your committee. I just have the pleasure of serving with you. But I would challenge the Department of Finance to come back to the committee before the end of this hearing with an earlier date for when we can expect that comprehensive analysis. Is that okay, Madam Chair?
Yes, I'm pretty sure that the sponsor would like an earlier date.
And then I appreciate that, Madam Chair. And then, Director, I think the second piece of it is, we talk about those three data elements. We talk about age, we talk about disability status, and we talk about length of years in that property as the primary. I'd like to get a little more information on the public record as to what the challenges are and why the request is being made so that the chair of the committee can make a more informed decision about what's an appropriate time frame for you all to have that analysis completed that in concert with permits the committee and the full council to give this bill the due diligence it needs in order to give it a shot of being passed and signed into law by the mayor.
Okay. As I have previously testified, the city does not capture the age of every homeowner.
Correct.
Not capture the salary or the income level of homeowners. Capture whether homeowners have disabilities or not. And we don't have a readily available database of the length of years that a homeowner has lived in their property. We have a way of massaging the last item, but the former three, we're relying on other sources of information, like, for example, information from State Department of Assessments and Taxation.
Director, I apologize for interrupting, and I certainly appreciate that you're you're aiming to answer the intent of my question, and perhaps I asked it the wrong way. So if you'll allow me to reframe the question more specific,
please do.
just in the interest of everyone's time. Please walk me through the methodology that you're going to use for determining A, data element related to age, B, data element related to disability status, and C, data element related to number of years in the property as the primary. The chair is better informed as to why it's going to take so long, and so that she can make a determination of what's the appropriate period of time. So like what I'm looking for is, where does that data reside? Who owns that data? What type of time frame it's going to take for your folks in BBMR to work with that agency or entity to capture data? And then once all three of those data elements are collected, what's the process for aggregating all that information to be able to come back with a specific fiscal analysis? That's what I'm looking for.
Understood. I think I would like for a member of my staff, Pedro Aponte, to address the data elements. Is he available?
I am available.
Okay. Now, and before you speak, Pedro, I would like to indicate that finance is agreeable to moving the date up to perhaps early to mid-November to come back for an additional work session, so that because everything ends December the 8th. So Pedro, why don't you discuss the issues with the data elements?
Good morning. Thanks for the opportunity to speak about this milestone bill and work with you in this work session. My name is Pedro Ponte, Revenue Director. I would like to address certain things, especially the concerns of Councilman Costello in regards to the timing, the data availability, and we will also like to talk to you about our conversations. Mara and I had conversation with a representative of Philadelphia government just to get some insight of how they manage the program and what the challenge they experience. And this is a pretty old program, and we want to share some of their experience as well. In terms of
Pedro, I apologize for interrupting.
Sure.
Before you begin, because the BBMR folks have shared with me, your team shared with me the Philadelphia situation. We're all aware of that. I would ask that you first address the three elements, 1, 2, 3, and then we can the Philadelphia piece, because I do want to get closure on this request of time.
Right.
And come back.
And
So
Councilman, and before you speak again, Pedro, and I just like to say that, if you, or add to that questioning, if you are following a model from Philadelphia that already has data, it seems like the time frame would not be as long. You would need that length of time frame.
Let me just clarify something. The Philadelphia structure, government structure, and tax structure is different than us. They have access to taxpayers' information, income taxpayer information directly. We don't have that because the state managed that information, all the income tax. The structure in terms of property taxes, revenues, and other sources of revenue, Philadelphia has it different than us. So we cannot mimic or copy exactly to the structure of Philadelphia model to us directly. One more thing that I want to clarify, Philadelphia doesn't have an exemption program. Philadelphia has a payment plan program that is structured for many years, and that's a structural difference from what we are proposing here, or what the legislation is intending to do. They don't have an exemption. They are very clear that property tax revenues are important for the finances of their city, and they created this program to minimize that impact by creating what they did. So it doesn't apply to us, Councilwoman, directly. That because they have a model already existing model, we can just copy and we're going to shortcut the time for how to manage. Is that clear?
Well, oh, wait a minute, I'm on mute. Can you hear me?
Yes.
It seems like you would already have data on things like age, disability status, and so on, and following basically a model, we kind of say it's like an outline. And because the sponsor had mentioned that this is kind of a sense of emergency, at least we could, I don't see a problem with having something developed from what you have and just looking at that model. Yes, you need time to do that, but you should have data there knowing, who is having problems with, their homes.
The data we know we have is individuals, and it's firsthand. It's individuals who go to tax sale. That's something that we record every year. We have a file. Who are they? We don't know the income level that those individuals have. We don't know if they are disabled individuals or are getting Social Security insurance. The only thing we know is that what's the assessment value and who went to tax sale. But if you don't mind, Councilman, I would like to share some analysis that we did. Just we can give you the overall spectrum.
Pedro, I'm sorry to interrupt, and respectfully, while I appreciate that, and I'm certainly willing to hear it, what we request at this time is a walkthrough of the data elements one by one. So let's start with age. Walk me through the age piece.
There's no right now. There is no way for us to get age information. It has to go through an application process. The state manages two tax credits for us. They manage the homeowner tax credit state level and the supplemental homeowner tax credit. That information goes through the state. Everyone who is receiving those credits go to the state and submit an application with them. And then the state send us a file when they say who these individuals are and how much the credit is going to be based on their criteria, eligibility criteria. That information, we don't have that information in hand. That's state managing. So that is for the age level in order to get the eligibility for the supplemental home tax credit. Income level as well. That application process is managed.
Pedro, hang on. One. No, that's okay. I appreciate it. It's very helpful. Okay, so the age information is captured on the supplemental as well as the HTC application at the state level.
Not the ATC, the homeowners.
The what?
The homeowners. It's a different, it's a state program.
Yeah, the homeowner's tax credit.
Yeah.
Okay, I just want to make sure. Okay, sure. So the homeowner's tax credit lists the age, correct?
The homeowner's tax credit is based on income.
No, I want to talk about age. I'm just talking about age.
Can Councilman and Mr. Aponte, can we, I think I'd like to hear from, I see Michael Leary is on, that really kind of is the in-depth person with a lot of what I think we need answers to. I'd like to put that on hold and have him come on and kind of explain his office and what he, that's the tax sale office. I think if we get some information from him, I think it would be helpful as well. Michael O'Leary, I see your name. Are you here?
I am here.
Hello?
Hello.
You're kind of muffled a little bit. You want to turn your sound up maybe?
All right.
Oh, there you are.
Okay.
Did you hear what I was talking about?
I did.
And did you hear Councilman Costello's questioning? Can you?
May I, Madam Chair?
Yes. Go ahead, Councilman.
Thank you. So between Michael and Pedro, I'm trying to understand how we get the data on the three elements. Element 1 is age, element 2 is disability status, and element 3 is element 3 is income, and now element 4 is how long they've been in the property. So starting with age, how do we capture that information? Pedro or Michael, feel free to jump in.
And I just want to say up front that for statistics like this, I rely on BCIT and or the Department of Finance. I don't have other avenues of getting data. So I don't know where that data would come from.
No, Michael, that's fine. Pedro, what do you have on the age thing? Walk me through age. You're on mute, sir.
Right now, we have no information about age in hand.
Councilman Costello, I'm going to step in. So, Mr. O'Leary, by law, if I'm correct, you or the Department of Housing has to send a list of seniors who have been in their house for 25 years, homeowner occupied homes. How do you determine, or where are you getting data to say that these are seniors, that they're a certain age, and they've been in their house for at least 25 years? We're with the city. So what departments are you get that information from to send the list to the state?
That list is generated by the Bureau of Revenue Collections and shared with me at the beginning of February. And I work with the Health Department's Division of Aging and Care Services to be sure they get the list, they understand the list, and the notification that they deliver to this list of people goes out in a timely way and in a way with all the information that's needed. I don't go outside of the Bureau of Revenue Collections for that information. And the metric we use is people who have owned and occupied their homes for at least 25 years, assuming that those people are older. Whether or not they're seniors, I don't know.
Okay, but it is the basis that they have owned and occupied the home for at least 25 years.
Yes.
Correct? Okay. So thank you, Mr. O'Leary. So Pedro, if Mr. O'Leary is able to get that information, you guys have access to that information to make a determination. The 25 years, why don't you have a conversation, or the department have a conversation with the Bureau of Revenue Services, or where Mr. O'Leary is getting this data from, so you can narrow down this year portion of criteria.
Yeah, Councilwoman, we were trying to address the other two concerns first. I think the length of people residing on those property is the more manageable. The real problem is the income, which is not the data that Michael was referring to, or the age. That is not what he's referring. He's referring to the time that those individuals have been in the property, and that's one of the criteria that you have.
Madam Chair, if I may.
Councilman Costello.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So Pedro, again, I want to walk through the age. How do we get the age data?
The age information has to come from an application process, period.
Okay, all right, that's the hard answer. Understood.
Yeah, so we have to create a model that.
Understood. That's fine if we don't have the data available. It's not our fault or your fault. Okay, that's age. Okay, let's go to income.
Same way. We need to request information in that application where they said this is the income, the household income, and have some type of proof that that's the real income and the individual who live in that property.
We can't go and ask the comptroller's office for that?
The state controller's office?
State controller.
We might, yes, but then we're going to have information that is touched by the state, and then we have to validate it. Yeah, that's an option.
So if I call a business tomorrow, can you reach out to the Maryland Comptroller's office and figure out if they can provide us income data for residents and be able to match that up against. So, for example, you have a list of properties that went to tax sale,
Yes.
and we know who owns each of those properties because that's in our real property database.
Yep.
Can you go to Maryland Comptroller and say, I have a list? It's 2 columns. The first column is the property address. The second column is the name of the person. And we need you to provide us with what they filed for income in last year's tax return. Is that possible?
That's going to be request on the shape of PIA. The Control's Office doesn't share that information, but inter-office request. So we can go, yes, and we can
At least ask.
Sure.
Okay. And then the last piece is disability status.
Disability status, yes.
How do we get that?
Disability status, we have to request it from the state as well. We don't have that information. I don't know. I honestly don't know if we host that type of information by any other agency. I would say health department. I'm not sure. But my I guess the shorter way to go is the state as well, because they have to.
Is that State Department of Health?
Yes, I believe. I have to research on that one. The information we got from Social Security Administration directly, and it's just a overall statewide participation, and they have a number for the city. But in order to get individuals' information, probably go that way and see if the state managed that as well.
Madam Chair, I promise I'm wrapping up. No more than 1 minute. So Pedro.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Pedro, so if you could reach out to the state tomorrow on that one by call of business as well. So in conclusion, in summary of all these random questions I'm asking, we can tell based on the information that Michael O'Leary has and the number of years that they've been in the property, we can find out what the max scope of total dollars of liens that would be excluded from our tax sale would be, knowing that that number is going to be somewhat less because people scoped out because they are not meeting the income requirement or are not meeting an exclusive and of being, or exclusive or of being disabled or above a certain age, correct? So we can make it, so finance can make a determination of what the maximum scope of the fiscal impact of this bill is, and should be able to do that in short order. Is that correct?
No, this is the finance director. The only data that is easy to address is the length of years of the property. That information that BRC gets, they get it from BSET. That's the only easy information. My proposal is that we come back in November. That gives us roughly a month to try to coordinate with the state on the elements that we don't have: age, salary, and disability. The easiest part is the years of service in the home. And we get that from BSET. Pedro, you want to jump in?
Yes, I fully agree with Mr. Raymond. Councilman Costello, I would like to have the opportunity to share with you an overall fiscal impact based on third-party data, means Census Bureau, Department of Labor, and Social Security Administration, just to give you at least a ballpark number of how the impact could be if it's an exemption or whatever other shape or form that we want to move this proposal. But I think that at least you're gonna have an idea. I'm gonna do my due diligence and call in the state and try to get specific information of individuals by address and identification on those requests in income and age. But I think it will be good at least for you to have some sense of what we are looking at, and see if that makes sense to you.
So,
Pedro,
this
thank
is
you
what I
so
want to
much.
say. Excuse me, Councilman Costello.
Yes, ma'am.
This is where I want to go at this point. We know how many homeowner occupied properties within Baltimore City went to tax sale for last year. Is that correct?
Yes,
Homeowner occupied. How many
yes.
and we know, Mike O'Leary, step in for me if you can answer this question. Do you know how many homeowner occupied properties that were on the list that you sent to the state for 25 years, where people resided for 25 years or longer? Do you have that number for this particular year, tax sale year?
It exists. I don't have it handy.
Okay. Would you be able to provide that to the committee?
If BCIT has it, I will be able to provide it.
Okay. So
And
what I'm going to say is
Councilwoman,
that
I'm sorry, Councilwoman Stephanie Murdoch from DHCD. I do have that information here for 2019 for the
Okay.
property owners residing in their property for 25 plus years. The properties that were eligible in 2019, the number was 2,723. The number of tax sale certificates actually offered was 731, and the number of tax sale certificates sold was 619. So the actual properties sold in 2019 for residents that or homeowners that have been in their property for 25 plus years was 619.
Okay, thank you. So what I'm getting at for the finance department is we go from 2,723, we go to 731 properties that were put up, that were owner occupied, that we know someone has been in for 25 years. I'm talking about legacy residents, which I think everybody pretty much understands at this point. We're talking about a very small scope. So right now, we're building models, or we're proposing to build models that we're going to say, we do need the true fiscal impact, I agree, but we're talking about building fiscal models and taking months to do something when we already have a certain amount of data showing this is a particular number. This is how many homes are going to tax sale. If you guys know on the finance side how many homeowner occupied homes are going, period, then maybe you can start there and drill it down from there with the average of the years that it's taken. I see you, Pedro.
Sure, Councilwoman McCray. If we have that data, the scope of 750 individuals.
Hey, do you think it's possible to get?
That being in tax sale for that being the property for
Costello, you're not on mute.
Okay, so can I speak? Okay, so the 25 year is something that we, in my particular experience, we haven't talked about the 25 year. The legislation as it stands today, it talks about 3 years. So there's a huge gap between, it's 22 years difference for those individuals who will be eligible and will not longer go to tax sale. So definitely we can explore that. We have the data to make an estimate of what the fiscal impact is, no longer and a broader view, but also want to make sure that that difference of the 22 years narrows completely the scope of individuals who might be targeted by this legislation, which is I mean, we are in full agreement with that as well, but that's nothing what we explored before. We didn't talk about the 25 year.
Thank you. So, and I'm going to say this, an original report that was submitted by the finance department, we had a worst case scenario. And we had this is what happens. This is the extreme, and this is the low side of it. So you're telling me that has that changed from the original report?
Let me clarify something in that report, Councilwoman. When our understanding, it was clarified after the latest conversation we had probably a week ago, that fiscal impact was combining the eligibility criteria was individuals older than 65, having $40,000 income, and then being in the property for more than 3 years. That narrows the actual language of the legislation. The legislation is saying if you have an income lower than $40,000, you are eligible. If you are 65 years and older, you are eligible. And if you receive Social Security insurance, you are also eligible. So that is a wider spectrum for eligibility for this legislation. The fiscal impact that we put there, I have it in front of me, which is ranging from $100,000 to $13,000, $13 million, was the combination of these three criteria.
Okay. Okay.
So that's the difference. It's very important. Now, just to satisfy your request, we can do the analysis for individuals older than 25 that been in the property for longer than 25 years, relying on the data that we manage, which is coming from the state.
Okay, great. I'm gonna move on. I'm gonna move on from here. I'm gonna go to the implementation portion, and then I'm gonna segue to someone else. For implementation, we're looking at to verify the information so people can submit their information. We're looking at a written application or online application. Do you know how long it would take to implement that?
I don't. I can't speak on that because I don't know what the capabilities we currently have. We have certain agencies or offices that might be able to shortcut that process. But one thing that needs to be defined first is what type of product we're going to be offering for these residents. It's going to be a payment plan. It's going to be an exemption, and how we're going to handle. Once we define that, we can then talk about resources and how that application process is going to work. Just a quick example that I want to give: when we talk to Philadelphia, they have 7 individuals working full time only to manage their program. We don't have 7 individuals right now to dedicate to do this as we speak. So that's also we have to take into account, and that doesn't include software specific for software we might need to use to get the data, evaluate the data, and have records of all these individuals. So I cannot speak on the timing. I think there's more conversation that needs to happen in order to understand exactly how this is going to work, and to just to echo what Mr. Raymond was saying. In order to make an effective program and satisfy what your intention, which is well-intentioned, we need to really come with something that, okay, we know how it's going to work before rushing it. And that's my personal opinion as well.
Mr. Horton, I believe you had your hand up, Mr. Walter Horton.
Calling me. Oh.
Yes, sir, we can hear you.
Yes. At this timeline, I got some concerns. What's going to happen to the homeowners that's going to be affected for the upcoming 21 tax sale? Will this be retroactive? I mean, if we implement a plan, will they get some type of retroactive consideration?
No, we've had no discussions about making this retroactive.
Well, the timeline that you're working from right now will put us right at the beginning of the advertisement process for the next year's, the 2021 auction that's held every May. So if there's no relief for the homeowners for this particular tax year, which is probably going to be higher in terms of volume of people because of the pandemic. We're going to have a lot of affected senior homeowners that could potentially lose their property.
And Mr. Horton, thank you for your comment. That's something that we are aware of. Thank you for your comment, sir.
Okay.
And were there any other comments or questions from any other committee members at this time? Okay, we're gonna move to the attendee list if there are no other comments or questions at this time.
Councilwoman, this is Michael O'Leary.
Yes, Mr. O'Leary.
Hi, if I may, I just want to say that the numbers of people who have owned and lived in their homes for 25 years and who have been on these tax sale rolls and whose homes liens have been sold at tax sale over the last few years has been fairly consistent. It hasn't varied that much over the last 2 or 3 years. So it may provide somewhat of a stable starting point and basis for moving forward.
And thank you, Mr. O'Leary. Guys, please pause with me just for about 1 sec, about 30 seconds. Give me just a second. Okay, and my apologies. Ms. James, I understand that you had something or you wanted to make a comment. Is that correct?
I was just going to add for what Pedro was saying. I don't know that it was fully clear for finance, but that we would be interested in proposing a payment plan option, and that when we were talking about Philadelphia, that's what we are speaking about. Philadelphia does not exempt any properties outright from tax sale. We couldn't find examples of programs for that to model it on. So finance is hoping to look at doing a payment plan for residents that would meet the criteria that once they receive final bill and legal notice would be able to enter into that payment plan. In talking with Philadelphia, the issue, and I think what we've tried to raise several times, is the enforcement aspect of taxes, that while we're looking at who goes to tax sale, and that's a number that we can easily give, it's what is the full universe of eligible properties that could fall under this classification, and that's the broad number that we are trying to get for you. Pedro was able to do some analysis using census data that if you're interested in seeing now, we can share. I think I emailed it to you earlier, but we can also follow up later. But we just want to make that clear that while we can look at what actually went to tax sale, it's really what is the broad universe that would fall under this eligibility requirement that goes beyond that specific number of bills that go out.
Mara, when you're talking about offering a payment plan, have you guys considered a payment plan for everyone? I understand that Philadelphia's is a payment plan for everyone. Are you offering something that's stepping outside of just the criteria? Was this going to be a payment plan for everyone or just for the set criteria within the bill?
So the analysis that we've been doing, and I can defer to Director Raymond here, but the analysis we've been doing is based on the criteria in the bill. And where we were, Philadelphia's program is very extensive, as Pedro said in the conversations with them. It's anyone can engage in it, but you pay based on income. And they have very extensive staff time and commitment and outreach that at this point in time, we don't have the capacity to do. So, but I'll defer to Director Raymond.
Yeah, this is Henry Raymond. The payment plans would be restricted to those individuals only to avoid tax sale. It would not be offered to everyone. The reason for that is the city needs the revenue in order to provide services. If we defer the revenue, we're going to have to start reducing services.
And I will add to that part of what Pedro spoke about with Philadelphia, that how their tax structure is different. As you know, property tax is a majority of our general fund revenue. It's about 53%. In Philadelphia, The majority of their general fund revenue actually comes from a wage tax that they have. And
So Mark,
Yeah.
Mark, I think we fully understand from this hearing, from the last hearing, how property taxes impact that budget. Again, I'm talking about, and I just want to get this on the record again. I'm just talking about a small subset from tax sale. We're not talking about all home owner occupied houses. We're not talking about the vacant homes that still go to tax sale. We're talking about for this specific criteria. So I just want to make sure that we're aware of that. If there are no additional comments or questions from the committee, we're going to go ahead and move on to the attendee list. And I'm sorry, Pedro, I do see that your hand is up.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Is what we'll appreciate clarification from you is what this smaller set that you are talking about, because as the bill is drafted right now, the number of eligible individuals is very high. But now we're talking about a smaller set of them, and if we had that, we can definitely work better numbers and identify what the fiscal impact for those individuals are. But as the bill is drafted, it is a large number of individuals will be benefiting from this.
I want to be clear. We're talking about with the finance department. I get that you guys are trying to say, hey, what's the worst case scenario out of this criteria? But let's be real. Everybody's not going to stop just paying their property taxes within who may or may not meet this criteria. I just want to make that. I just want to say that. So we are going to move on to the attendees and hear from the attendees at this time. Again, if there are no other comments or questions from the other committee members that are present at this time.
I just want to add to what the sponsor is saying, that we have to start really looking at the big picture, because we are in COVID right now, and we know it's not going to be ending anytime soon. And again, as the sponsor had mentioned, we're talking about people that have 25 years or more, and they've already set in paying they know that they have to pay their mortgages and so on, and it's not a very large number. So I'm just making this statement as to reinforce the clarity. Thanks.
So we're going to start with the attendees who have their hand raised. I do see the first attendee is going to be Odette Ramos. And Odette, whenever you're ready.
Hi, good morning, Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, members of the committee, and members of the city staff. Thank you so much for this opportunity to speak. And thank you all for your really in-depth discussion on this. It seems like we're really trying to get to the bottom of it. I just wanted to respond to a couple of things here. It would really be great to have something ready for the 2021 tax sale. I was so excited that the councilwoman introduced this during this term to try to get to that tax sale. So I think it's important that we come up with something, and that we work with the advocates, a lot of whom are on this call, to help with what an application process would look like. And also, if the Department of Finance could have a range of options for payment. In some cases, it would have to be exemption. In some cases, it'd be great to have payment plans just from the beginning, even for all taxpayers. But we need to have exemption available. We cannot just rely on on just pay on because there may be people who just cannot pay and just cannot have the choice between, paying taxes, getting their medicine, or eating. So there has to be some of work that has to be done, and I'm sympathetic to the finance department because you're likely going to need some staff who can actually work on this, or frankly work with some of the advocates that are here on this call that can help with some of that social work aspect of qualifying people, and making sure that they're that they can that they're okay. But I think an application process is important. The data that you're asking for analysis, I think we heard already to use the numbers that we already have and look at what happened before as part of your analysis. And then again, it would be great again to have this by the next tax sale, because I think that is extremely important. So I'm very excited to be working with all of you on this. My other colleagues that are on the call can go into a lot deeper on the fiscal piece, as well as what clients are going through on this. But I think it's very important that we work very hard to make sure that we're able to start this process for the 2021 tax sale, which is coming up rather quickly. Thank you very much for the time.
Thank you. So we're going to move on to the next person who has their hand up. That's going to be Brie Jones.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes, okay. So just want to echo the thanks for Councilwoman McCray for raising this bill and consideration and discussion that's happened so far. I just wanted to raise a few points. There's been a lot of discussion around the fiscal impact of removing folks from the tax sale, which I can understand for a cash-strapped city, but I would like us to also keep in mind, what is the fiscal impact of vacant homes when families are displaced? What are the amplified costs of people who have to tap into homeless services and other social services because they've lost their homes due to tax sale? Can we also clarify that this bill isn't actually removing or forgiving the debt obligation, although Odette just raised that possibility, but I'd also like us to just kind of keep in mind that this is just removing people from the tax sale, and the only true foregone revenue would be from private investors. This bill only defers the potential of tax income, and that's from what the Department of Revenue has said is around $100,000. So I'd like to add that a payment plan is a really strong solution, and I think that this payment plan should be both retrospective in that it assists homeowners with paying their delinquent taxes, but that it should also be proactive and preventative in that it allows folks to stay current on their taxes. It's a lot easier for folks to, make $50 a month payments on a $600 annual tax bill rather than a $600 lump sum at the end of the year. I'd also advocate for a payment plan for all. And because when you think about it, for a city that is so cash strapped, it would probably be really helpful for the revenue department to have a more current income stream rather than waiting for lump sum payments at the end of the year. And it'll also provide more clarity of the projected tax flows, which I think, again, would be really helpful for a city that's kind of constantly bootstrapping. Kind of pivoting to the data question around age and income, et cetera, I'd also encourage the working group to look into who is receiving the homeowners tax credit, because we know that it is severely underutilized in the Black butterfly. And I think that it would just make a lot of sense that if 619 owner-occupied properties that are legacy residents are kind of consistently going to tax sale, well, maybe the ombudsman should be reaching out to those homeowners to make sure that they're actually receiving the homeowner's tax credit, because that would probably reduce this entire issue significantly. And I think it would, be really compelling to ask the state to provide a retrospective tax credit for homeowners that were qualified to receive the homeowner's tax credit but haven't been receiving it. The other thing I'd like to add is that while I appreciate the fact that 25 years in someone's home is an amazing, it's incredible because these are our legacy homeowners. I also just want to maybe suggest that imposing a 25-year requirement may be excessive because there are folks who are just beginning to build generational wealth. They might have been in their home for 10 years and they still need the help, and I think that they're still worthy of receiving this assistance. And this is maybe a little bit tangential, but there are, adult children who inherited property from their deceased parents, and they've been stewarding these homes and, maintaining them, but they may not be on the deed because, again, of lack of access to legal services and the tangled titles that plague, again, the Black butterfly because of compounding layers of oppression and systemic disinvestment. So I just want us to keep people in mind who may be falling through the cracks, and just making sure that we're not forgetting them as we kind of continue to look at the requirements of this bill. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your comment. We are going to go to Mr. Frank Boston next.
Can you hear me?
Mr. Boston, we can hear you now.
Betty, I'm Frank Boston, and I represent the Kenny Law Group as well as the Tax Sales Participant Association. I just want to say we're on the phone and have listened to this conversation. It's been a good conversation. We are here to be a resource. The people I represent are the ones who practice in this space every day, and so we're here to maybe help answer some of the actual practical questions, anecdotal questions, and maybe shed some light on the situation. I do want to say, and I want to say it publicly, we do applaud the issue that you are trying to tackle. And, we aren't here to be adversarial on that, but we just want to help you narrow the focus and the scope of the individuals that are vulnerable in this situation, to help provide those individuals relief. We are, as stated before, we are concerned about the potential of fraud that could happen if we don't take the necessary measures to ensure that those who are really in need get this help provided in the bill. So, we're here to work with the finance department, and we're here to work with this city council. I'm not going to get into all of the details because it looks like there's still some work to be done. But on each one of the points, we're here to help make the bill a better bill and to work with the group. I don't necessarily disagree with any of the previous comments. The only thing I would say is, for some of the people who weren't on the council who did make comments, just consider the fiscal impact if we do some of these things prematurely without the data. But for now, I just want to say we're here to continue to work with the committee to get to a bill that makes sense and works and tackles your problem.
That's going to be Nika and Namdi. I apologize if I've not pronounced your last name correctly.
Can you all hear me?
Yes, we can. And Nika, are you still there?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
I can hear you now.
Okay, cool. So a few points I would like to echo what Odette and Bree said. Number one, I think that Baltimore, specifically the finance department, is being short-sighted surrounding this bill. This is a great opportunity to increase revenue collections, and the way in which the revenue collections could be increased is by opening a payment plan up for all. And by payment plan, we're talking about prior to the taxes actually being considered delinquent. Right now, you can only pay your tax bill semi-annually or annually. And to Bree's point, many folks have difficulty making that large lump sum payment at the end of the year, because these are folks, many of whom don't have a mortgage anymore. So they're responsible to doing that, or they're investors who the mortgage companies are no longer escrowing their mortgages. So if, through this bill or through some other mechanism, Baltimore would allow monthly payments of taxes, of property taxes, we suspect that the property tax collections would go up, and therefore, overall, they would go up overall, and therefore the city would have the money it needs up front to do its business. And then that doesn't take away from also offering payment plans potentially with deficiency spreads for those who do become delinquent, who meet these vulnerability requirements as set. Also, as Bree said, we have to be really careful about the years that we put that we assign on this particular, assign to these vulnerable homeowners, because of issues with estate planning and not understanding or not having access to it. We have many legacy homeowners living in homes that their names are not on, although they actually would be the inherited party of the homes. And so I think it's just really important also about the data. Much of this data is available on Baltimore Neighborhood Indicators Alliance that could be extrapolated. So I think I want to be clear that I find it to be just inappropriate that between this session and the last session, that finance wasn't able to pull the data, much of what is publicly available, together, whether it was looking at 25 years, which is, they seem to be more okay with that, or looking at 3 years. It is important as a municipality that we're using data in decisions, and it just simply should not take this long to have, to have these data options available. And lastly, I like to, address this idea about fraud that has come up in this session and in the last session. What is really important to note is that we need to be looking not at the one or two small possibility that someone would defraud the tax credit, defraud this particular system, but look at what is happening. What is the cost of having folks put out of their homes, homelessness services, mental health services, and what that really costs. What that really costs the city, and focus. If we want to really look at fraud, we should be taking a look at things like bid rigging among the tax certificate purchasers. Are we making sure that these folks that are trying to get or bidding on the tax certificates are not setting things up so that they don't have to pay a lot of money? So if we want to look at fraud, we need to look at it all across the board, and not just in ways that might pathologize those homeowners who are vulnerable, those homeowners who in fact have been paying a disproportionate amount of property taxes due to racism in how properties are being assessed. And so again, we, the SOS Fund, are happy to continue to work with you all through this process. But the goal, our goal, is to make sure that we protect those homeowners who are vulnerable, whether they are elderly, whether they are disabled, or whether they are low income. Thank you.
Nika, thank you for your comment. The next attendee that I see their hand is up is going to be Dan Ellis. Dan Ellis. Just want to repeat, Dan Ellis, are you there at this time? We're going to move on to the next attendee. I have that listed as Asia Mallory. Asia Mallory.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so I just want to reiterate the need for this bill. Tax sale compromises, well, I'm from the Maryland Volunteer Lawyer Service. Tax sale compromises the financial stability of my clients and low-income families, and it's definitely a present threat to home stabilization that I've seen coming from my clients. Seniors on fixed incomes are extremely vulnerable, as well as the low income and disabled. We have estimated that 60% of eligible people aren't getting the tax credit. And even though they are eligible for the tax credit, they're not eligible for retroactive credits. So it's difficult for them to be able to pay their property taxes at the end of the year. I've had low income and senior clients who have had extended stays in hospitals, and they've returned home to their houses in tax sale, and we haven't been able to get them the retroactive credits because they weren't eligible for that program in particular. One of the clients, they started looking for valuables to sell in their home, and the other client started looking for private loans. So as a result of this, many of my clients are left in a worse, in a worse financial position. The sudden loss of a significant amount of income or money creates a domino effect of debt. Many of my clients and their families, they have to redistribute their funds from either food and medicine. Some can no longer make their utility payments or their car payments on time, and it results in an increase in home destabilization. So like at the end of the day, the real cost to the city is an increase in homelessness and an increase in the use of city services. Thank you for this time to testify.
Thank you so much for your comment. I just want to state I see one final attendee with their hand raised. If there's anyone else who would like to make a public comment after the next and right now the final attendee, please use the raise hand function. And we're going to continue at this time. The next person I have is Miss Linda Martin Smith. Linda Martin Smith.
Good morning. Can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Good morning. Yes. I haven't been in my home for 4 years. My father, he passed away and he left me the home. I pay taxes every year. My taxes is usually $2,200. And right now I'm disabled and unemployed. And last year I almost lost my home. They wouldn't allow me to make payments. They wanted it either, like the young lady said, annually or semi-annually. And so I almost lost my home, because I couldn't pay it. They kept going up. It went from $2,200 to $2,500. And I started getting notices, that my house was going to go up for tax sale. Actually, Asia Mallory helped me to apply for a tax credit. And it was a stranger who actually helped me to pay my taxes on my home, because I did a story on the radio, and somebody called in and they helped me to pay my taxes. But other than that, I would have lost my home. And I'm just trying to find out why they won't allow people to make payments, because it is hard to come up with $2,200 all at once. Thank you for allowing me to speak.
Ms. Martin Smith, thank you for speaking and thank you for sharing your story. The committee truly appreciates it. We're going to go to John Kern next. John Kern.
Hi, thanks. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
I just want to say thanks so much for this bill and everybody's work on it. I really appreciate it. And I think that last testimony probably speaks louder than most. So I'm with the Maryland Volunteer Lawyer Service. And for the last 2 years, I have been in the position of trying to get as many Baltimore City residents to do their estate planning as possible, to avoid deed entanglement issues and to raise all of these concerns, many of which lead directly to tax sale. And I just want to take a second to push back again on this idea of fraud. And I want to push back for 2 reasons. One is when we speak about legacy homeowners, which this focuses on, obviously, particularly, we are talking about a much broader definition of civic engagement. So though it's important to speak about the importance of paying property taxes, which is the financialization of civic engagement, legacy homeowners, they run our community associations, they run our block clubs, they keep our churches open and running, their deacons all across the city. They allow almost every nonprofit to function as all of the messaging goes out. The work they put in supporting hour after hour, unpaid, with no capacity support, no salary, supporting this city is beyond any tax payment imaginable. The idea that we nickel and dime them over paying property taxes is morally reprehensible. And furthermore, the idea that their children will try to fraud the system is frankly unbelievable. I've been messaging for 2 years about the importance of having your name on your deed so that you can get property tax credits, but then you can get home repair programs, you can get weatherization programs. Living in a house without your name on the deed is all of the downside of homeownership and none of the upside. The idea that people would knowingly take their names off their deed and put it in the names of eligible homeowners is ridiculous. Furthermore, when you transfer a home after that eligible homeowner has passed away, and you have to have a clean lien certificate at that point, meaning all the property taxes owed on that property will be paid at that point. So definitionally, it is impossible to commit fraud. The city will get that revenue back when the property transfers to this so-called fraudulent homeowner. And the idea that they would be in league with their older adult parents playing around with their deeds, beyond the fact that it's so difficult to file a new deed or take your name off anyway, is morally reprehensible. I think it's unbelievable that the idea of fraud even came up. Just wanted to push back on that. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for your comment. I see that Mr. Dan Ellis, I just wanted to return to you. You would be the last attendee with your hand raised at this time. Mr. Dan Ellis, are you there to provide any type of public comment at this time? And Mr. Ellis, just one more shot. We just want to make sure if you needed to make a public comment that you're able to. Okay, and since we're not hearing from Dan Ellis, I just want to say this. I want to thank the full committee. I want to thank everybody for taking the time at this hearing. And I do want to say that while I do understand the Department of Finance's position, we will be moving forward with this legislation. Our next work session on this bill is going to be Thursday, October the 1st of this year. At this time, I'm going to turn it back over to our chairman, Councilwoman Sharon Gray Middleton. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair McCray. And just a couple comments on this particular bill as I was listening. And first of all, I want to give kudos to my vice chair. This was her, she did a wonderful job. This was her first time in playing that role. And what better time to do it on a very important bill that she is the sponsor of. So I moving forward, I just picked up a few things that I think the agencies need to listen to. you know, I think this is a great bill to really practice on communicating with other agencies, because there's a lot of different agencies that play a role in bringing this bill together, and there's clearly not a strong sense of communication. And I just encourage you to, this is a very important bill, and that's going to help the constituency of Baltimore City. And I just encourage you to really kind of figure out the people in your agency that, or designate, that can really work on this and get something to us at our next session that the vice chair has mentioned, which is October 1st. So and then a couple other things that really stood out was, you know, things about the application process, the different types of payment plans. Someone had mentioned about the, you know, ombudsman and the tax credit. So the people that gave testimony gave some ideas of how they could help also to move this bill forward. So on that note, before closing, I just want to remind everyone that the two bills before this one was sale of property bills, and they have moved on to second reader. And if there's, we have one more member of the committee, Councilman Costello. Do you have any final comments before we recess to?
Nope, I'm set. My concerns about that analysis have been addressed. Thank you, Madam Chair and Madam Vice Chair.
Okay, so at this point, we're going to now recess until October 1st at 10 a.m. We'll have another virtual hearing, and I will see you then. And this session is in recess. Thank you.